Welcome to Starbound, where every star tells a story. Imagine a world where the sky tears open, bringing strangers from the stars to a parched and desperate land. What would you do if your very survival depended on facing the unknown? Well, let's get into the story. The sun beat down like a hammer, its relentless rays turning the parched earth below a blinding white. Jarak stalked his prey, a monstrous six-legged beast with skin tough as old leather. Sweat dripped from his brow, but he ignored it. Hunger was a more pressing concern than the heat. His tribe depended on him. Tila's voice, usually warm like the coals of a dying fire, was heavy with worry as they huddled in their makeshift shelter that morning. "The beast herds are growing thinner, Jarak," she rasped. "The great hunger will be upon us soon." He'd promised food, his fingers ghosting the smooth, worn handle of his spear. Promises were all they had left. Flimsy scraps of hope against the harsh realities of their existence. His father had told tales of a time before the world turned to dust and the sky burned with 1,000 angry stars. They were just stories, meant to soothe children to sleep, weren't they? And yet, a flicker of movement in the scrubland ahead caught his eye. With the grace learned from a lifetime on the hunt, Jarak dropped into a crouch, muscles coiling, eyes locked on his target. The creature was massive, its armored hide gleaming in the relentless sun. Jarak's mouth watered. This would feed his people for a week. He rose, spear poised. In that moment, the world shattered. The sky roared and the ground trembled beneath his feet. A streak of blinding light tore through the heavens, followed by another and another. The beast he'd been hunting forgot its hunger, shrieking in terror as it fled blindly in the opposite direction. Jarak didn't follow. His gaze was locked upwards, heart pounding in his chest like a trapped bird. Giants of gleaming metal descended, blotting out the sun. Fire spewed from their undersides, scorching the already ravaged earth. And within, he saw shapes, figures that were not human, encased in metal skins. The others, Tila's fragmented stories of falling stars and invaders with skin of silver, came flooding back. Fear, colder than any night wind, sliced through him. But beneath it flickered an ember of something else. Curiosity. Who were they? Why had they come? Panic gripped his belly, a primal urge to flee back to the caves and bury himself beneath the earth. But his feet remained planted. Jarak, hunter of barely enough, felt an overwhelming need to know. He had to see these creatures, these others, up close. One of the monstrous vessels settled with a deafening shriek, sending plumes of dust churning skywards. Even from his vantage point, a sliver of a hill away, Jarak could make out the sleek alien lines of its hull. And there, an opening. A ramp descended and the others emerged. They moved with an unsettling fluidity, their metal skins reflecting the harsh sunlight in blinding flashes. They held strange devices, long and thin, that pulsed with an eerie blue light. From his vantage point, Jarak couldn't discern their faces, but he felt their gaze sweep over the landscape. Were the others searching for him? His breath caught in his throat. The instinct to hide was near overwhelming, yet his feet didn't move. He had to know more. Crouching low, he slunk away from his position, moving with the silent grace that defined his tribe's finest hunters. The terrain was his ally, the parched gullies and stunted shrubs offering a sliver of concealment. He was a shadow, a ghost in this ravaged world. The alien vessel loomed larger with every cautious step, an impossible mountain of steel against the unforgiving wasteland. Jarak found a concealed vantage point, a depression overlooking the encampment. The others moved with an unnerving precision, their strange devices crackling with energy as they scanned the barren ground. What were they searching for? Survivors? Resources? Or something else entirely? A knot of fear tightened in Jarak's chest as he caught sight of it. A cage. Crude, wrought from twisted branches and bone. Its bars could barely contain their frantic occupants. Members of his tribe. Tila's wrinkled face was a mask of anguish as she pressed herself against the bars, her voice a thin wail against the roar of the alien machinery. The ember of curiosity in his gut died, replaced by a burning fury. His fingers tightened around his spear, the familiar wood a grounding presence in the storm of the unknown. They had taken his people, his family. A surge of reckless defiance coursed through him. It didn't matter that the others were stronger, stranger, that they possessed unimaginable power. It didn't matter that fear clawed at his insides. He had to do something. Jarak drew in breath, the sun-scorched air thin in his lungs. He was a hunter, a survivor, and this was his territory, his land, no matter how desolate it seemed. He knew every crevice, every hidden gulch within a day's march of the settlement. He couldn't attack head-on. That was the path of the fool. But he could watch. He could learn, and maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to hit back. Night fell like a shroud, cloaking the land in deceptive stillness. The alien encampment blazed with artificial light, harsh and unyielding against the inky sky. From the safety of the shadows, Jarek watched. The others moved with an unnerving efficiency, their metal skins catching the light in chilling flashes. He saw no signs of his people, the crude cage swallowed by the vastness of the alien vessel. His stomach churned with a mixture of fear and growing, desperate anger. He itched for action, for revenge, but he clung to the scraps of hunter's wisdom passed down through countless generations of his tribe. Patience, observation. These were the keys to survival. The creatures retreated inside their monstrous ships, leaving behind a few sentries armed with crackling blue weapons. Jarak noted their movements, their patrol patterns. They seemed oblivious to the dangers the wasteland presented, unaware of the nocturnal horrors that lurked in the shadows of the broken world. A bold plan started to take shape in Jarak's mind. It was risky, reckless even, but it was the only chance he had. The aliens had superior firepower, yes, but he had knowledge of the terrain, a lifetime spent navigating its deceptive dangers. He slipped deeper into the shadows, circling the encampment. There had to be an access point, a vulnerability he could exploit. And then he saw it, a maintenance shaft, half concealed by a jutting slab of rock. It was small, barely large enough to squeeze through, but it led inside. Jarak's heart pounded against his ribs. He'd only ever heard whispers of the world before the fall, a world of strange machines and towering structures. Could he navigate their innards, find a way to free his people? He inched closer. The two guards near the shaft seemed uninterested, their attention drawn by the harsh glare of lights from the main ship. This was his chance. Soundless as a viper, Jarek slid into the shaft, his rough-spun clothes barely making a whisper against the cool metal. The darkness was absolute, pressing in from all sides. He moved by touch alone, his fingers running across smooth conduits and wires that hummed with an unknown energy. The close confines made him want to gasp, but he fought the urge, every breath measured and shallow. His pulse throbbed in his ears as he emerged into a dimly lit chamber. Crates were stacked neatly along the walls, marked with alien symbols. Tools he couldn't begin to understand were laid out on a workbench. Panic threatened to overwhelm him. But then he heard the voices. Tila's voice, cracked with defiance, mingled with the guttural sounds of the others. Jarak crept closer, peering through a narrow ventilation grate. The sight that greeted him made his blood run cold. Tila was bound to a metal table surrounded by the others. Their gleaming forms bent over her, their touch not gentle but probing. A strange device hummed near her head, thin wires trailing to a pulsating console. They were studying her, dissecting her thoughts, her memories. The room was a hive of alien activity. Others moved around Tila, studying readouts, their long, multi-jointed fingers tapping at smooth control panels. They spoke in a language that was like shards of glass in his ears, harsh and discordant. And then a flicker on one of the many screens caught his eye. A moving image showed a small group of his people, faces etched with fear, being prodded towards the looming alien ship. Among them, he saw a flash of bright red cloth, the ragged remains of an elder's robe. It was Tila's daughter, Mina. His heart twisted with a renewed fury. Jarek had to act. He surveyed the room, frantically searching for an advantage. The tools on the workbench. Could he use them as weapons? Perhaps, but they were crude tools wielded by a primitive hand against creatures that could melt stone with their strange lights. But then he saw it. A stack of cylindrical containers. They looked almost familiar. and nestled around them were smaller disc-like objects. A sliver of recognition sparked in Jarek's memory. Tales of explosions before the fall, the weapons of the ancients. Had the others inadvertently brought him the means to fight back? A desperate plan started to form. He needed a diversion, something to draw their attention away from Tila. He looked around the room, eyes alighting on a panel of blinking lights. He didn't know what it controlled, but it pulsed with energy, a focal point within the alien nest. Jarek reached in, his fingers brushing against the strange wires. He ripped them free, bracing himself against the shock. Sparks showered the room, and the lights flickered and died, plunging a section of the chamber into darkness. A guttural sound of surprise arose from the others, a brief moment of chaos amid their unsettling order. This was his chance. Jarek scrambled through the vent, dropping silently into the chamber. He felt the weight of their gazes turn toward him, the air vibrating with the hum of their weapons. He had seconds, no more. He charged with a guttural cry, the roar of his defiance echoing strangely in the metallic chamber. The others were caught off guard, their weapons raised but a beat too slow. Jarek had the advantage of surprise and the desperation of a cornered animal. He slammed into the nearest alien, his shoulder knocking the creature into one of the humming consoles. Sparks flew and the creature shrieked, its metallic skin blistering and blackening. Jarek snatched up a heavy tool, a wrench perhaps, and lashed out, striking the others that crowded him. They seemed oddly fragile beneath their imposing metal shells. He was outnumbered, vastly outmatched, but he fought with the ferocity that only a man protecting his people could possess. He heard the sharp crack of a bone and felt hot fluid splatter against his face. He didn't know if it was his blood or theirs. It didn't matter. Jarek reached for the containers on the workbench, dodging the pulse of a weapon that singed his hair and left a smoking hole in the wall behind him. One of the others lunged for him, and he swung the cylinder with a desperate force, the container shattering against the creature with a blinding flash. The explosion threw him against the far wall. He felt the heat before the pain, a wave of searing agony washing over him. Smoke filled his nostrils, his ears rang. Through the haze, he saw the others struggling, their metal shells cracked and burning. He scrambled to his feet. They were focused on quelling the fires, their weapons lowered. He could see Tila, her face pale with shock, still bound to the table. Jarek had created his chance. He launched himself at her bonds, slashing at the restraints with a jagged shard he'd snatched up amidst the chaos. Tila stared at him in stunned silence, blinking back tears. They were cut free, and in that moment a guttural roar filled the room. One of the others had turned, weapon raised, energy crackling. Jarek instinctively shoved Tila aside, and the world went white again. Jarek came to slowly, agonizing pain washing over him in waves. It felt like his body was on fire, burning from the inside out. His head throbbed, and his ears rang with a deafening whine. He could see nothing but swirling blackness and bursts of blinding light. A voice, Tila's voice, cut through the haze. "Jarek, can you hear me?" He croaked a response, the sound barely a whisper against the ringing in his ears. His body felt heavy, unresponsive. Panic clawed at him. Was he dying? Tila's hand was on his, surprisingly strong. "You will survive this, my boy. You are strong." Her voice was strained, but there was a steely resolve in it. "The cage. Mina. She is free. They left after the explosions." Tila's voice broke slightly. "We lost many, Jarek. They took others, but many escaped thanks to you." Jarek tried to sit up, and a wave of nausea nearly overwhelmed him. Tila pushed him gently back down. "Rest now. I will find a way to heal you, to heal us all." The knowledge of his people's uncertain escape filled him both with relief and a deeper sense of purpose. There were survivors now, refugees of their own ruined world, and he had given them that. A bitter victory, yes, but it ignited a spark of hope within him. They drifted in a haze of pain and exhaustion for endless hours, or perhaps days. Jarek had no way to measure time. Tila cared for his burns with strange herbs and concoctions, soothing the excruciating pain with a touch that had become surprisingly gentle. She spoke to him of things he couldn't fully comprehend, the others, their purpose, and her own fragmented knowledge from the texts of the ancients. It was too much to take in, too disorienting. One day, or perhaps many days later, the ringing in his ears subsided, and Jarek finally managed to open his eyes. Blurred shapes gradually resolved into the dim interior of a cave, the familiar rough-hewn stone walls, the tangy scent of dried herbs, the soft glow of embers in a makeshift fire pit. Home. He remembered this place. It was one of the hidden sanctuaries from the ancient tales. "You are awake," Tila declared. Her face was gaunt, etched with deep lines of worry and weariness that mirrored his own. But her eyes, those eyes that usually held the gentle warmth of glowing embers, now seemed to blaze with an unfamiliar light. "We must talk, Jarek, about what you did, what you saw. But first, rest. Gather your strength." Days turned to weeks. The burns that scarred Jarek's body slowly healed, leaving behind angry red welts and tightened skin. He spent his time helping with the tasks of survival, foraging what meager food the unforgiving land would offer, strengthening the hidden camp's defenses, and teaching others the skills needed to evade the occasional patrols the others sent out. His nights were filled with whispered conversations with Tila, who seemed as restless as the desert wind. "They wield the powers of the ancients," she would say, her voice low and filled with a mixture of wonder and horror. "The stories were true, the lights that swallowed cities, the weapons that shattered the mountains. The others are not just invaders, Jarek. They are inheritors." He listened, trying to piece together her fragmented information. His body mended, but his mind remained restless, grappling with the enormity of what he'd witnessed in the alien encampment. In the darkness of the caves, the flickering firelight cast grotesque shadows of the alien forms on the walls, their cold, gleaming eyes ever present in his nightmares. One night, as the others slept fitfully around him, Tila beckoned him outside. The desert was chillingly beautiful under the stark moonlight, the barren landscape bathed in an eerie silver glow. They sat on a wind-worn rock, a chasm yawning below them. "They searched my mind, Jarek," Tila began, her voice barely a whisper. "They seek something." He waited, his heart pounding against his ribs. He had witnessed her torment in the metal chamber and suspected this was the true cause of her changed demeanor. "A relic," she continued falteringly. "A key, they call it. They believe it holds secrets to a power that they couldn't even fully understand. A power left behind by those who came before them." Jarek's mind raced. Were the others not the inheritors of ancient might, but mere scavengers themselves? It painted them in a different light, a desperate one. Then a realization struck with startling clarity. The cylindrical containers, the discs, are those weapons? Tila nodded grimly. Relics themselves, echoes of forgotten wars. We don't know how to fully control them, Jarek. They are volatile, as you witnessed. She looked at him, a haunted expression in her gaze. But they hold power, raw and dangerous. A chill ran down Jarek's spine. They had barely stumbled upon these relics, driven by desperation in a bid for survival. Yet the others possessed knowledge, a purpose. This wasn't merely a war of survival, it was a race against time. "What do we do?" Jarek asked, the question hanging heavy in the cold night air. Tila stared out at the desolate landscape, her gaze drawn to the horizon, where the shimmering lights of the alien settlement pierced the night sky. "We cannot hide forever," she said, a fierce determination replacing the haunted look in her eyes. "We are sparks, clinging stubbornly to life. But sparks can ignite a fire." He turned to her, a surge of reckless hope rising within him. "But how? How do we fight back?" Tila smiled, a mirthless curve of her lips. "We don't. Not directly. Not yet. But we plant seeds. Seeds of chaos, of disruption." She reached into the folds of her robes and retrieved a small, intricately carved box. It seemed strangely out of place, weathered by time, yet gleaming faintly in the moonlight. "You saw them, Jarek. The way they moved, their relentless order. They fear what they don't understand. She opened the box, revealing a jumble of wires, crude metal scraps, and a small, pulsing stone. This, she placed the strange device in his hands. This is our seed. Jarak inspected the object, utterly baffled. It looked like nothing but a crude collection of scavenged parts assembled with a childlike fumbling for something greater. It mimics their signals. It will draw them, confuse them, Tila continued. Plant these wherever you can, lure them into traps we've laid, send them on wild chases, make them question. She paused, a glint of cunning in her eye. Make them fear the shadows. Jarak's mind raced. This was no grand battle plan, no glorious clash of armies, but amidst the desolation it was a form of fighting they could manage. To be the unseeable hand, the ghost nipping at the heels of a giant. It filled him with a strange mix of trepidation and a perverse thrill that was entirely unlike him. The others, he began. My people. They cannot fight. No. Tila's eyes hardened. There will be eyes. The ears in the wastelands. You, Jarak, will be the hunter in the darkness. If what I saw in their minds is true, they will underestimate us. They think us broken, less than insects scurrying amidst the dust. We will become their nightmare. The transformation of the tribe into a guerrilla force was swift and brutal. Jarak became a specter moving with unnatural stealth through the desolate wasteland. He studied the aliens, their routines, their technology. He became an expert at laying traps, using the harsh elements themselves as weapons. Quicksand disguised as solid ground swallowed alien patrols whole. Ravines, once just inconvenient obstacles, became fatal snares with cleverly timed rockfalls. He learned to place the crude beacons Tila created, luring the others away from settlements, disrupting their search for his people. They came to fear the strange anomalies, the inexplicable disturbances on their sensors. There were whispers among the tribe of a new entity, a vengeful spirit of the wasteland itself. Jarak didn't dispel these rumors. Let them fear what they could not see. It was a war of attrition, fought in the shadows with small, hard-won victories. With each ambush, each panicked alien communication he intercepted, he felt a flicker of satisfaction. It didn't undo the past, didn't bring back those they'd lost, but it brought balance to an utterly uneven conflict. One day, returning from the endless expanse of desolation, he found Tila waiting for him. The fire in her eyes burned brighter than usual, and there was an odd stillness about her that put him on edge. There is something you must see, she said, her voice clipped with a strange urgency. She led him deeper into the caves, to a chamber he'd never entered before. The air here felt heavy, almost tangible. Strange symbols, older than any he'd seen in the ancient texts, were etched into the rough walls. And there, in the center of the room, was a shimmering pool of darkness. It's a rift, Tila explained, her voice filled with awe. A tear in the fabric of everything. It bleeds from where they came into our world. Jarak stared, his heart thudding a drumbeat of primeval fear. The pool seemed to writhe and shift, pulling at his gaze. He felt an unnerving sense of wrongness, like the natural order of the world was being twisted and bent out of shape. They used it to come here, Tila continued, and they seek the key to make it stronger, to widen the tear and allow more of their kind through. A thought struck him, chilling in its implications. Could we close it? Her eyes widened, then hardened with a desperate resolve. We must. The rift became the focus of their efforts, an insidious wound in the heart of their ravaged world. Jarak spent days studying it, his hunter's instinct now directed to an invisible enemy. The pool of blackness seemed to pulsate with an alien energy, and its proximity made his skin crawl with unease. He mapped the subtle shifts in energy surrounding it, seeking a weakness, a point of disruption. Tila delved into whatever archaic knowledge she had gleaned from the deteriorating scrolls and half-forgotten legends. Murmurs of elder gods and forgotten relics filtered through their whispers, tales from before the fall that Jarak had dismissed as campfire stories. Yet now, the rift brought a chilling reality to these myths, reminding him that there were forces in the universe they barely comprehended. One moonless night, a plan, fragile but desperate, began to crystallize. "It reacts to disturbances," Jarak told Tila, sketching a rough map of the rift in the dust with his finger. "A surge of energy will cause it to pulse. An explosion," Tila whispered, her eyes mirroring the flickering flames of their meager fire. "A powerful one, focused close enough." Jarak nodded grimly. He knew what she was implying. The relics, the echoes of ancient weaponry they had stumbled upon, were now their only hope. Yet to use them at the heart of this alien tear, to amplify the instability. He shivered, not from fear, but from the sheer scale of their desperate scheme. Their tribe would be the key. They who would become masters of deception, shadows among the ruins. Over the following weeks, they led the others on a wild chase, escalating their attacks and drawing an ever-increasing number of aliens away from the settlement. When all was ready, Jarak and Tila infiltrated the aliens' camp, leaving chaos in their wake. It was a dance with death, each step risking their capture and obliteration by the aliens' vastly superior weapons. And then, there it was, the humming power core that sustained the rift. Jarak planted the last relics, rigging them to explode with a crude timer scavenged from the aliens themselves. He met Tila's eyes across the chamber, and for a flicker of a second he saw the frail old woman she had been before the aliens had come. Then, with a nod, Jarak sprinted back towards the exit. The explosion was not a blast, but an implosion. The chamber, the rift, and everything within it seemed to suck inwards before vanishing in a flash of blinding light. Shockwaves rippled outwards, catching Jarak before he reached the exit. He flew. Then all was darkness. Aching, coughing, Jarak clawed his way back to consciousness. The alien settlement was a smoldering ruin, smoke and debris filling the air. Of the rift, he could see no sign. It was simply gone. He staggered to his feet, a triumphant roar rising in his throat, and then fell to his knees, the weight of exhaustion overwhelming him. He slept in the heart of the enemy's ruins, his slumber the sleep of the dead. When he woke, it was to the sound of voices. His people. They had survived. They found him amongst the wreckage. Their leader. Their savior.